Look, I think ultimately it was better than feared. I mean, if you look at just the pandemic and what they're seeing, not just in the supply chain, but in light of the demand environment, I view it was better than feared. Now, look, in terms of no June guidance, in my opinion, it was prudent. I mean, you're talking about it would basically be playing a game of blindfolded darts in terms of where the range is. And the street's looking on the other side of that dark valley. The one thing I'd focus on is China. Definitely looks like some stabilization and potential rebound, and services. Services is the key to what's really holding the valuation in here in just a very uncertain time.
I know coming into these results, you mentioned in your latest research how the big focus for investors would be any clues around Apple's 5G launch, this much anticipated launch of a 5G phone. What did we learn on this front in terms of timetable, and what are your sort of expectations and the trade-offs involved in launching versus delaying?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, look, from a tea leaf perspective, I continue to believe we're looking closer to December and potentially could be pushed out to 2021, depending on what happens with COVID and just the overall global lockdown. Look, they're in a quagmire right now because can they release the phone into September, October? Supply chain is starting to get more normalized. But do they release it into this type of environment with unemployment, health, and I'd say groceries and hand sanitizer right now over an iPhone 12 in terms of from a priority perspective? And I think that's the balancing act. I do believe only a small chance they release this into September, October.
And you mentioned how important China is, obviously, as a market from the demand side of things, but it's also crucial for the supply side of the equation for Apple. And I know that on the earnings call, Tim Cook came under some pressure, and he effectively rejected the idea that they're overly reliant on China when it comes to their supply chain. What's your view? And do you see them retooling and adjusting their supply chain in the wake of the pandemic and all of the political tensions that have evolved on the trade front more broadly, aside from the pandemic?
Look, and we saw this last year with U.S.-China trade war. I mean, Apple's really the poster child for when you look at companies heavily tied to China with Foxconn, the supply chain. Realistically, there's really no chance they can move out of China more than maybe 5% of production over the next 2 years. That's fundamentally where they're positioned from a Foxconn, the overall supply chain perspective. And even though they're going to get heat, I do not see that changing. But that's also why they're in the eye of the storm from a supply chain perspective, but also demand. And the important thing is supply chains normalizing. And you're starting to see some rebound in China. I'd say that's probably what I view as a ray of light in a very dark storm.